Hello, Internet. It's me, your favorite batshit crazy wizard. Anyway, tonight, we're going to have another little episode of something that actually turned out to be a really good idea for me. Got me a lot of views. Great Albums Revisited. Yes, children. Tonight, we're going to revisit a great album. And tonight's great album that we're going to revisit is called Black Virgin, Most Likely to Exceed. Can you see that, Internet? Might have a little bit of reflection from the light because I haven't taken the cellophane off of it yet. But this album really means a lot to me. Yes, it does. Black Virgin was a post-punk, pre-metal, I don't know what you would call them kind of band. They were just like so far out there. And I really mean that from the heart. Not like they were bad. Not like they were great. They were great. But not like they were good, because they weren't good. They were great, but they weren't good. And they weren't bad either. I love this band. I love this album. Black Virgin on this album is called Most Likely to Exceed, right? And I really love this album. I'll tell you in a minute. This album was recorded in 1986 at MTV Studios. No bullshit. It was done that way. Really cool album, the way this one went down, actually. It features three of the musicians that I respect most in the entire world. And that's no bullshit. The first of all, which is Kenny Leinhardt. Can you see that? Will my cameras focus? Kenny in his black Gibson Flying V. I loved him. Oh my God. The first time... Okay, now here's where I let you in on the little freaking innuendo that I got going on with this band and why it's such a fetish of mine. It's funny that I'm reviewing this album. While I didn't play on this album, I was at one time a member of Black Virgin. So, I'm reviewing an album that I didn't play on, but it's from a band that I actually did play with. So I don't know if that gives me any legitimacy to actually review it. But goddamn, I love this album. Okay. Anyway, the first time I met Kenny Leinhardt, how did I meet Black Virgin is a good question. So let me get that out of the way first. Black Virgin was this New York City... You know, they were basically a punk band. They wanted to be a metal band, but they were a punk band. You know, and they didn't know why they were doing it. They didn't know how they were doing it, but they just did it. And when the noise they made was just the most immaculate, wonderful noise that I'd ever heard in my life. I heard the single 44 Killer, and it was backed with Feel the Steel. Great 45. Now, that was the original Black Virgin. That was Cathy Burke, the drummer, who actually is the one who started the band, because she put a want ad out on Village Voice or whatever it was. She recruited Kenny Leinhardt, guitar player extraordinaire, in my opinion. Guy's got the most unique style playing. It's like freaking, if Jack White listened to Kenny, he'd be like, oh yeah, Kenny's the missing link between Jack White and Robert Johnson and Randy Rhoads and Michael Schenker and every fucking thing, every Eddie Van Halen, any other guitar player that you ever heard in your entire life. I mean, That's Kenny Leinhardt. And that's how much respect I have for him as a musician. Now, Kenny and Cathy and Jimmy started this band. Jimmy left. Joey got married. We never go far. I just played Summer 69 tonight at fucking Winter Carnival in Cooperstown. It was great. It was packed. It was at the Upstate Bar and Grill this year instead of the fucking Farmer's Market, which was nice because I don't think I got pneumonia this year. Last 3 years I got pneumonia every time I played that show. But anyway, I digress. Back to Blacky-V. Okay? Black Virgin, Kenny Leinhardt, Jimmy Strain. They were like rock stars. To me, they were like New York City's Motorhead, basically. With the sexy chick on drums, who always wore like a freaking corset and stuff. But I'll get back into that later too. Me and my little Cathy Burke, how she turned me into a little boy who just loves dominatrixes. But we'll get back into that a little later in this therapy session. So anyway, Black Virgin were just like, wow. They had a 45 out. They had, they were cool. They had management. Anyway, I was in high school. I was like a little kid. I was like, when I heard the 44 Killer single, it was probably like 1980, end of 82, 83, and I was just like, oh, this is so cool. This guy, he kind of sings like a cross between like Lemmy and like Rob Halford, because Jimmy Strain was singing at the time. But I love that single, 44 Killer. And Cathy, of course, and Kenny on the cover picture. Cathy, in her corset and shit like that, I was a 13-year-old boy, I mean, Betty Page was the only porno I'd ever seen. Because you find those magazines in upstate New York under your friend's dad's bed, and it's like, oh yeah, here's my dad's porno from 1962, So I guess it was the first profanity I ever uttered, and the first pornography I ever saw was Black Virgin. I was just like, wow, this band is local, they're so cool. Cathy's freaking so smoking hot. And I love you, Cathy, if you're watching this. I will always love you. Not in a kind of weird way. It's just I love you. Obvious reasons. Well, we'll get to that at the end of this anyway. So, it's New York City. Wow, I keep like cutting to different scenes in the movie, the Invisible Movie, inside my head. And it's like 1984. And I found out that, well, okay, now here's the other little thing related to Black Virgin. My sister's boyfriend was Jimmy Strain, the original bass player's cousin. So, and they both, last names were both Strain. He was Billy, the other was Jimmy. Nice Irish family, right? Grew up to become a cop, and really a fucking hero of mine too. Why did my sister marry him? Anyway, whatever. So I was a big fan of Black Virgin, first of all. And I found out that they needed a bass player because the guy who replaced Jimmy Strain, Sean Vasquez, he had left also. He had left because he was having family planning issues. He was having another kid. He wasn't going to have time to like be going to Manhattan and playing with, this band on 38th Street. I mean, he lived in Staten Island, and he did get a great band together in Staten Island eventually. They showed up to one of our gigs, and he was like, they actually showed up to the gig at the Intimate Lounge that we played, I think with Carnivore, and Sean was there cheerleading. So anyway, there was Sean. Anyway, so I found out their bass player was missing or gone or whatever, and Kenny Creedy at the time was managing Carnivore, and Carnivore had just started. I swear to God, this is 84. So they had just started. And, I don't know, Kenny knew Bill Strain from Brooklyn Tech or something. I mean, we were all like high school kids at the time. Kenny was barely out of high school. I think he was a grade or two ahead of me. And we all went to Brooklyn Tech because we were like super smart motherfuckers. But anyway, once again, I digress. Kenny got me the audition for Black Virgin, and I basically showed up to the music building on 38th Street. It was a shitty, dingy fucking room, but they had an amp for me to play through, so that was cool. And I just showed up with my bass and my pedal board, and I completely just blew them away because I was like this little 16-year-old, 17-year-old virtuoso musician, you know, because at the time, like now, I have nothing better to do than sit around all day and practice. But I got to the audition, and they're like, well, we're trying this new song, you know, I think it was called Moving Out or something like that. It did go on the demo that I did with them, and as per this album, Cathy says right here in the little paragraph about me, oh my god, I'm getting to the album. She says, although we made no recordings with Rob, he was a great asset in live performing, and we played many high-powered gigs with him, including the famous L'Amour East and L'Amour West. He later formed his own band, Primal Scream. So, I mean, she actually mentions me on the liner notes. And I love this band. I really love this band. I know this is kind of getting weird, because the first time I met Kenny, you know, when I went to this audition, he opens the door and he's got like a joint hanging out of one side of his mouth and he's got like a tall bud in the other. And I was just like, am I in trouble? Did I just like walk into an organized crime syndicate or something like that? You know, so I walked through the door with Black Virgin. And there's Kenny looking like Kenny, you know. I mean, he was kind of like a... They used to make a joke about him, about some other guitar player, you know, his day job was delivering chicken, and one day they just made Kenny Leinhardt. You know, but Kenny, he was like this smallish guy, like an ogre, like this old druid freaking wise man, you know. But he was batshit crazy too. This guy had like 4 jobs. You know, he had the donut job, the daycare job, this job, that job, the other job. The guy worked his balls off. I mean, he was one of the hardest working people I ever met in my entire life. Anyway, next comes to my favorite, one of my all-time favorite people in the entire world. As a matter of fact, as far as women go, I think she's just below Julie Sarago from Knighton. I think it would be like Julie and then like Cathy Burke. I think would be like my top 2 favorite women in the entire world. Cathy's sitting there. You know, I mean, you look at the picture on the album. Look at Cathy, see? Now you can see Cathy if you can. You know, there she is. Black corset, you know. She had black... Oh, my God. She had the most gorgeous hair. Well, my first impression, though, was I met Cathy in person. And she's sitting there and she's got her glasses on, you know, and she's got her hair pulled back or put up or something. She's wearing, like, you know, some mom jeans and, like, a Motorhead t-shirt, you know? And Cathy was a librarian at the New York City Public Library. And it was so funny because, like, you know, there's the old, you know, fantasy, like, oh, you know, it's the librarian. Oh, yes, you're overdoing that book. And... oh, well, the library's about to close, and maybe I could help you, you know, find a book that would help you, but I have to close the library first. And all of a sudden, the librarian lets down her hair. She opens her blouse, and, you know, she goes from being frumpy to being like, oh, my God, she's dressed in, like, you know, freaking black lingerie, and it's like, wow, chicka, wow, 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 chicka, wow, wow, chicka, wow, 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 wow. Anyway, so I saw Cathy, and she's sitting there looking like a librarian. You know, Kenny's smoking joint, drinking a tall boy, and you're like, hey, you know, how you doing? And they were the first people in the entire world who actually ever treated me like an adult, you know? And it was so cool being with them, you know, that first practice. And then I came in and I wrote the bridge for a song. Kenny's like, yeah, well, this kid, he comes in, he writes the bridge for a song, does bass song. And I had the precision bass then with the Kaler tremolo on it, you know, and a big pedal board. And I was into my whole Billy Sheehan trip, like I was like a cross between like, you know, John Entwistle and Eddie Van Halen. I mean, that's what it came down to. You know, so and I don't play like that anymore. I can't play like that anymore. I try to play like that, but I can't. So that's how I met Black Virgin, and that's why this review is from my freaking heart. This album is fucking excellent. Like I said, recorded at MTV Studios. This and the funny thing is, this was just re-released. I just bought this on eBay. It's the re-release of it on vinyl. They re-released their album on vinyl. Now, here's the funny thing about this album. Okay, little tidbit of information for all you people in Deutschland or Queens, or wherever the hell she might be. But this album came out on vinyl only in Germany, and that's the goddamn honest truth. It only came out in freaking Germany. They did release it themselves, kind of on a cassette in you know, New York. Kenny actually, or Cathy actually did. She sent me a copy of it on cassette, which I fucking wore out because I just listened to it over and over and over again because I love these songs. Wow, it's funny talking about them now, you know. I wonder what Cathy's doing. I bet she's still beautiful. You know, wow, Cathy Burke. I'm going to talk about Cathy Burke right now. And I'm probably going to shut the camera off. And then I'm actually probably going to come back and talk more about this album and Black Virgin. Because right now I think this video is getting a little long in the tooth. But I'm going to finish you off talking about Cathy Burke. She was the sweetest person I ever met. She was so gracious. I mean, she was like your aunt, you know, that sends you, like my Aunt Diane sends me a Christmas card every year or a birthday card every year. And she's like my mother doesn't even remember anymore, but my aunt does. And it's like, you know, she always sends me a card, you know, dear Robbie, we love you, your family loves you, Jesus loves you, whatever. You know, it's like, I look at it and I go, yeah, great. And then I'm like, but it's the best thing that I got that year, you know, this year for my birthday. Cathy was like that kind of aunt. You know, she sent out Christmas cards and she remembered birthdays of the people in the fan club. You know, the Black Virgin fan club was international, mostly Northern Europe, you know, and New York City. But they had, through mail order and fanzines and all this, their marketing strategy for the time was just fucking brilliant. And a lot of people copied it. But Cathy, she was so gracious. My mother loved her. She loved my mother. We all went to a show at L'Amour's one time, and since it was in Brooklyn, we just all basically, the whole crew from Manhattan, you know, because it would have took us 15 minutes to walk to my mother's house. We all crashed out, and nobody was driving, but a lot of people were drunk, so we just figured we'd get to my mother's house. So we all stayed at my house in Brooklyn. Mind you, because I was still in high school. I was living with my parents. But Cathy, we all crashed down on the chairs in the living room, the couch. Cathy got up the next morning and she's talking to my mother. I think they were having coffee or tea, chatting in the kitchen. Everybody else is fucking passed out, you know. And Kenny gets up finally. I don't know. We all wake up around, you know, 10 o'clock in the morning, you know. And my dad saw Kenny and he didn't say anything bad to him, but he was just like, tied, or maybe it was my mother said, tied one on last night, huh? Because Kenny had, you know, been drinking tall boys all day and just kept drinking beers at L'Amour's. I think we went to see Raven. I'm not sure, but it was some band that we all really loved. So yeah, I mean, these people stayed on my parents' like living room floor. I mean, that's, you know, my relationship with this band. So my review of the album, Most Likely to Exceed, they said I never recorded with them, but I did. I actually recorded all the songs on side A, except for Desperate Means. Blood Brothers, I actually did. That's the song he was talking about that, like, I showed up the first time and wrote the bridge for. But This album is fantastic. It's 8 tracks. It's short because, like I said, back in the 80s, albums were, you know, you couldn't make them too long because there was only a limited number of grooves. Even though there's only one groove on the album, there's a limited amount of how many grooves how many times it can go around. You know, so the thickness of the groove gets thinner every time the album gets longer. So if you want a better sounding album, you just make it really short. And this thing is like basically a half hour long. And it's really, really just the product. I mean, this is heavy vinyl. This is not floppy ass shit vinyl. I mean, you can hardly bend this thing. It's beautiful, and I can't wait to get it onto a good stereo so I can actually listen to it. Now, mind you, Joe Cerna, who's the member of Black Virgin that I've yet to get to, so I'll get to him right now. This will just be one big long video, and if you love Black Virgin, you watch it. And if you don't, you know, you can just bip through it all. But Joe Cerna, my main MFing man, right there. That guy, how do I get it right in front of the lens? That guy, okay? That guy. Joe Cerna, now you got facial recognition right there. Joe Cerna. Never met the man. Never met him. But I love this guy. I used to write. You know, MySpace was a great thing, and Facebook was too, to a lesser extent. But MySpace was such a great thing, because if you were an artist or you're a creative person, you know, everybody was putting their bands up. My old band, you know, Primal never got one, you know, because Primal hasn't got anything except for this stupid YouTube thing. But Black Virgin, they put up a freaking MySpace, and I was just like, wow. But it was being run by Joe, so I wrote to Joe all the time, you know. And he sent me everything Black Virgin ever did. He burnt me off like a bunch of CDs, but then he burnt me off like an MP3 or whatever, with everything on it. So I listened to that for eons and eons and eons, and I love it. I love it. He even did actually include the demo that I was on, and that was in that compilation. So I do have a copy of it that Joe sent me. So there really was a Black Virgin recording with me on it. But anyway, they basically re-recorded the Most Likely to Exceed demo that I had played on. But they did it so much fucking more brutal. Oh my God. Joe came in and he took my immature little baby, you know, virtuoso bass playing. He kind of unvirtuosoed it, you know, and he's like, no, fucking make it. But he knew what I was doing on a lot of tracks. And when I listened to this album, you know, I'm like, I know he listened to the demo I played on. I really do. So I guess I influenced him a little bit, but he just got this fucking tone like I've always wanted to get. He played a precision bass too. I did too. You know, maybe he used regular stock pickups, and I just loved Joe's sound. I mean, the first time Cathy sent me this album, I was like, man, I love Joe's sound. I didn't even know what he really looked like because it was a cassette copy. It didn't have pictures on the back, you know. Matter of fact, I didn't know what Joe looked like really until I met him on MySpace, you know, which was really cool. And we used to write to each other, and I'd be like, how do you get that gnarly ass tone? And I spent tons of money trying to like replicate the gnarly ass bass tone on this album, you know. The man's fantastic. And he's a sweetheart. He's another sweetheart. Like I say, this band, like Kenny comes off as gruff, you know, but he's the sweetest guy ever. Cathy is like Mother Teresa. Joe is like a really sweet guy. And the last email, or one of the last ones, I mean, it was on MySpace, and we've kind of lost track of each other over the last decade. But he's like, dude, we got to hang out one day and have like 1 million beers. And I was just like, dude, that would be so fucking cool. I would love to see these people again. Black Virgin, Most Likely to Exceed, man. It's on Wyland Records. And the songs are Night Riders, Most Likely to Exceed, Blood Brothers, Desperate Means. All ones I played with them. And these are the ones that I did after these are the ones that came out after me. And it's Life After Life, first to the worst. You know, everybody's bad. And Hand Over Fist. Don't you ever notice it's like they all have like 2 or 3 word titles? And it's except Most Likely to Exceed, which was I'm the one most likely to exceed. I'm the one most likely to exceed. And I did a bass solo. I did. Joe does the bass solo, I think, better than I did it. He does the bass solo, though. So, anyway, I love this album. Black Virgin, okay? Most Likely to Exceed. You can find it on eBay. They're a great freaking band. I love these guys, and I'm so glad they re-released this. 2018. I finally got my hands on a copy, and I'm just digging this album. So fucking cool. Anyway, guys, hey, thanks to everybody who came out to Winter Carnival show tonight. It was fucking packed. You guys were awesome, and all the lip sync people that. I don't know if they get an A for performance, but they all definitely get a B for fucking balls. Anyway, love you guys. Keep on rocking in the free world, which we didn't do tonight. Anyway, love you. Stay clean. Good night. Ta-ta. Where's my off switch?